Hey everybody, so yesterday I made a video about the GiveSendGo funds being frozen by Ontario's government, and there's a little confusion as to where we stand. One big thing was that GiveSendGo has put out a statement that I do want to go over real quick, but there is some miscommunication on why the funds could still end up being frozen. So when you take a look at this statement that GiveSendGo has made, know this. Canada has absolutely zero jurisdiction over how we manage our funds here at GiveSendGo. All funds for every campaign on GiveSendGo flow directly to the recipients of those campaigns, not least of which is the Freedom Convoy campaign. Now, that may be true that they are still able to do what they need to do with the funds, but what happens when they deposit the funds into an account that is associated with somebody that they've already labeled a domestic terrorist? It freezes the funds immediately. Global actually kind of goes over that too, but there's another one that I kind of want to go over before I go into Global's little snippet about what would happen if it actually made it to the banks. So GiveSendGo to ignore Ontario's attempt to freeze nearly $9 million for the trucker convoy. GiveSendGo said GiveSendGo says it is not subject to Canadian court orders and claims it will be ignoring Ontario's attempt to freeze the trucker convoy donations it is hosting on its crowdfunding site. The Christian website has been hosting the Freedom Convoy donations since GoFundMe pulled the campaign after discussions with local police and officials calling the protest unlawful. On Thursday, the Ontario government issued a court order to freeze the GiveSendGo funds. However, the Delaware-based company says it will not follow orders and instead give donations to the truckers directly, hence the tweet I just read. Ontario's court order says the trucker convoy donors page is in violation of section 490.8, one of the criminal code that prohibits any persons from disposing of or otherwise dealing in any manner whatsoever any and all monetary donations made through the Freedom Convoy 2022 and Adopt a Trucker campaign pages on the GiveSendGo online fundraising platform. GiveSendGo, which says it's the #1 Christian crowdfunding website on the internet, has been adamant that it believes in freedom fundraisers for anyone. And this is why everybody has been right behind them, and they have been a beacon of light in this dark, dark time. The new donation campaign was set up on the Christian website last week with the goal of $16 million US. As of Friday morning, more than $8.6 million had been raised. The campaign says money raised will be dispersed to our truckers to aid them with the cost of the journey. Organizers say the funds will be used for water, shelter, legal, and financial aid and permanent infrastructure for continuing advocacy in whatever form that takes. Last week, GoFundMe, arguably the internet's most popular crowdfunding site, removed the campaign, which had raised over $11 million as a result of multiple discussions with local law enforcement and police reports of violence and unlawful activity. GoFundMe says the Freedom Convoy fundraisers has been removed from its platform, and funds will be automatically reimbursed to donors, but that wasn't even initially the case. So here's where things get tricky. So this kind of goes over that exact same thing from the very beginning. It's a global news one. You know that they are sort of trustworthy whenever it comes to bragging about the things that they consider a victory. But one of the big things that comes up is, oh shit, where did it go? It was right after the tweet, all funds from every campaign will go to the truckers. Organizers have also touted the cryptocurrency Bitcoin as another way to generate funds for protesters and avoid other potential fundraising shutdowns, including during a news conference that was live streamed to supporters on Wednesday. So I do have a link to a cryptocurrency donation site that I will be including in the description down below. Ontario's move to freeze access to the donations comes the same day as all Party House of Commons Committee of MPs heard testimony from deputy directors of Canada's Financial Intelligence Hub about how it doesn't cover crowdfunding sites like GoFundMe, which is true. FinTrack has a mandate to identify money linked to terrorist financing and money laundering from reports it receives each year from entities including banks, insurance companies, money service businesses, and casinos. It doesn't investigate potential crimes or stop money from flowing, but passes its intelligence on to the police. So there was also a part here with a quote. Yes, here it is. If the money were going through a Canadian bank, for example, and directed to the Proud Boys, they're a listed terrorist organization, that money would be stopped by the bank. Annette Ryan, another deputy director at FinTrack, testified this gives them a line of sight into the crowdfunding sector. At the outset, Mac Killip said FinTrack doesn't discuss intelligence disclosures made to police, but when it comes to the protest unfolding in Ottawa, he said there hasn't been an upswing in suspicious transactions being reported. We have not seen a spike, he said. Among one of the questions MPs had about the millions being generated for protesters through crowdfunding sites was the appearance funds were being sent anonymously. Matt Killip says, while the public may not get to see who is making donations, that doesn't make them anonymous. He pointed out donors must use credit cards to send money, and the fact that GoFundMe offered up refunds after it shut down the protesters' campaign demonstrates it has the information it needs to identify an individual. So, here's the problem. They may not be able to freeze GiveSendGo from being able to do whatever they want with that money in terms of how they want to send it. But if it goes to a Canadian bank, Ontario has jurisdiction over that. And that's where the freeze comes into play. It's not freezing GiveSendGo's end, it's freezing the recipients. So once they've already labeled everybody in this protest as like a terrorist or a domestic terrorist, or having such a broad term like terrorist being used for this protest, which I think is absurd in itself. But if they are labeled as terrorist, the banks have to freeze the fund based on the fact that Ontario has already passed this. It's no longer a question of will the judge pass it. It's already been passed. It's just how it has to be. It's how it has to be. How it has to be handled by the banks themselves. So once the funds or the outpouring of funds goes to people and it's a transaction from somewhere that doesn't make sense to their history, they will freeze it immediately. It's just frozen assets. So it's not that GiveSendGo can't do anything with the money. It's that whoever receives it can't, because these protesters have already been labeled domestic terrorists by the government. That's just how it is. So unfortunately, we're looking at a situation where if GiveSendGo was to still somehow get the money to the truckers, it'll most likely be through crypto. It's the only way that makes the most sense because it's untraceable that way. If they were to somehow get somebody across the border with all that money and disperse it through cash, that is still considered funding terrorism. So they wouldn't be able to do that either without people being arrested left and right. It's actually quite shitty, really. I was hoping I would have more information on this, but unfortunately, with what has happened in the last 24 hours, the only thing that we've gotten so far is that Ontario has gotten a judge to pass this freeze of the money, and GiveSendGo is going to try to find a way around it. They won't be able to do it directly through the banks, because if they do, it'll get frozen and the money will be useless. If they do it through cash, it'll be the same thing. It'll just get confiscated because it's funding terrorism, even though it's just a fucking protest. And if they were to do it through crypto, which is probably the easiest way to get them their funds, the one issue becomes how do they turn the crypto into tangible money once they receive the crypto? And how can they do it in a way that's fast enough where they can actually spend it? So now becomes a problem of time and not even really time. Now just becomes a problem of how they're going to actually get that money to the truckers. So I'm awaiting for more statements on the side of GiveSendGo, but as of now, their hands are kind of tied. They can still funnel the money through to banks if they wanted to, but they have to realize that if they do it, the banks will freeze it, and then that money is useless. That's the update I wanted to put on this. Hope I will see you all next time. Love you guys. Bye-bye.